Have you ever wondered what a 15,000-strong empire looks like? Gyms for sale? It's not a pretty picture. It looks like an abandoned garage on a street. Any street with the shutters down and the echo of weights that no longer fall. CrossFit wasn't just a type of exercise. It was an identity, a tribe, almost a religion for millions of people. At its peak, it had more than 15,000 affiliated locations, tripling its closest competitor and a multi-million-dollar sponsorship with Reebok. Today, the brand has been put up for sale for the second time in less than 5 years. It has burned through 3 CEOs, and its name is stained by controversy. It's one of the most spectacular falls in the history of fitness. Just to give you an idea of how fast the collapse happened. In 2018, nearly 500,000 people paid to compete in its worldwide tournament. In 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, its founder imploded on social media. This caused hundreds of gyms to abandon the brand within hours. The empire crumbled as quickly as it was built. So, if you stick with me, we're going to unravel the DNA of this phenomenon. We'll see how a brilliant marketing idea turned into a cult, how its business model was both its superpower and its kryptonite, and how the man who created it all was also the one who pressed the self-destruct button. This isn't just the story of a gym. It's a masterclass in branding, community, and the danger of building an empire on the personality of a single man. It all started with an idea as simple as it was radical, doing exactly the opposite of what everyone else was doing. To understand the rise of CrossFit, you have to understand the mind of its creator, Greg Glassman, a guy who was a natural-born contrarian. If you said the sky was blue, he'd argue it was a greenish social construct. In the early 2000s, the fitness world was a predictable and boring place. On one hand, you had commercial gyms, full of machines where people moved like hamsters on a wheel, headphones on to ignore the rest of humanity. On the other, you had the bodybuilders' corners, an exclusive club of mirrors and grunting. Glassman saw this landscape and blew it up. His proposal, CrossFit, was the antithesis of all that. Instead of long, low-intensity workouts, he proposed short, brutal bursts. Instead of isolation, he encouraged community. Instead of machines, he used barbells, kettlebells, and bodyweight exercises. And his stroke of marketing genius was to use an open-source model. Through his website, CrossFit.com, he published the workout of the day for free every day. You didn't have to pay anything to do it. It was as if Coca-Cola published its secret formula and encouraged you to make it at home. This counter-positioning strategy was devastating. While traditional gyms spent fortunes on advertising, CrossFit grew organically, creating a legion of followers who felt like part of a clandestine and revolutionary movement. This strategy of giving away the main product, the training, and monetizing adjacent services, like coach certifications, was key. It created a community before it created a business. But this rebellious spirit, which made it unique, also sowed the seeds of its future downfall, because a rebellion without rules, sooner or later, turns into chaos, and that chaos was about to become incredibly profitable. The real secret to CrossFit's success wasn't in the muscles, but in the psychology. In an increasingly isolated society, Glassman, perhaps without realizing it, created the perfect third place for a generation that desperately needed it. The third place. It's a sociological concept that refers to a space that is neither your home, the first place, nor your work, the second, but where you find community and a sense of belonging. For decades, that place was the church, the neighborhood bar, or the social club. But at the beginning of the 21st century, church attendance in the United States was at historic lows, and people, especially millennials, were looking for something to belong to. And that's when CrossFit appeared. They didn't call it a gym. That was too conventional. They called it a box, a raw industrial space without luxuries. Inside that box, you weren't just an anonymous customer. You were part of a tribe. Everyone knew your name. They suffered with you through every workout and celebrated your achievements. This creation of community was so powerful that it became a viral marketing machine. The joke at the time was, how do you know if someone does CrossFit? Don't worry. They'll tell you within the first 5 minutes. And it was true. People didn't just go to work out. They were CrossFitters. They wore the clothes, spoke the language, with their WODs, AMRAPs, and burpees, and evangelized their friends and family. This reduced the customer acquisition cost, or CAC, to practically zero. The members themselves were the sales team. In countries like Spain or in Latin American cities such as Buenos Aires or Santiago, where community ties are culturally stronger, the model exploded. It became the perfect plan for after work. A place to socialize, compete in a healthy way, and feel like you were part of something bigger. It was less of a gym and more of a support group for people who liked lifting heavy things until they wanted to cry. But this community, so close-knit and passionate, also developed the traits of a cult, with a charismatic and unquestionable leader at the top. The engine that allowed CrossFit to go from a handful of gyms to a global empire of 15,000 locations was its business model. A mix of brilliance and complete irresponsibility. Instead of choosing the traditional franchise model, which is slow, expensive, and full of rules, to protect the brand, Glassman chose a much looser licensing model. To open a CrossFit box, you only needed to take a weekend level 1 course, pass a relatively simple exam, and pay an annual fee of about $3,000. And that was it. You could put the CrossFit name on your door. There was no quality control, no rules about where you could open, no territory protection. From a growth perspective, it was a masterstroke. While a franchise like McDonald's takes decades to build its network, CrossFit did it in less than one. From just 13 affiliated gyms in 2005, it grew to over 13,000 by 2013. If you multiply 13,000 gyms by $3,000 a year, you realize that CrossFit headquarters was bringing in tens of millions of dollars in almost passive income. It was a money-making machine with ridiculously low operating costs. But this is where the ticking time bomb started. TikTok. The lack of control meant that the quality of trainers varied enormously. You could run into a biomechanics genius or someone who had just gotten their certificate the previous weekend. And now they were teaching you how to lift 150 kilos over your head. On top of that, the lack of territorial protection led to brutal cannibalization. A gym could open, become successful, and the next month, one of its own trainers could open another box right across the street, competing for the same clients. Suddenly, instead of one profitable business, you had two fighting to survive. It was like giving everyone the recipe for Coca-Cola, but without giving them the bottle design or the distribution network. The result was a saturated market with thousands of versions of the product, some excellent and others frankly dangerous. The model that allowed them to grow so quickly was now suffocating their own affiliates. As gyms multiplied out of control, the public image of the brand began to take a very specific and ultimately harmful direction. With the signing of a 10-year, $150 million sponsorship deal with Reebok in 2011 and the broadcast of the CrossFit Games on ESPN, the brand became established in the public mind as an elite sport. The CrossFit Games were marketed as the search for the fittest man and the fittest woman on the planet. You saw superhuman athletes lifting absurd weights, running marathons, and doing Olympic gymnastics. It was an incredible spectacle. The problem is that 99% of the people paying a membership at a CrossFit box didn't want to be the fittest athlete on the planet. Most just wanted to lose a few pounds, look better at the beach, and be able to play with their kids without getting out of breath. But the image the brand projected was one of extreme suffering, vomiting. Its first unofficial mascot was a sinister clown called Pookie, and a constant risk of injury. Articles started appearing in outlets like the New York Times, questioning the safety of the method. The brand, led by the combative Glassman, responded defensively, suing its critics instead of addressing the concerns at their root. This marketing strategy alienated the mass market. People started to see CrossFit not as a fitness solution, but as something intimidating and dangerous, reserved for an elite group of masochists. It was the perfect moment for competitors like Orange Theory or F45 to emerge. They offered a lighter and safer version of high-intensity training in a cleaner and more corporate environment and stole a huge share of the market. CrossFit had become so enamored with its elite image that it forgot about its real customer. It's like if Ferrari only made ads about their Formula One cars crashing at 300 kilometers per hour. It's spectacular, sure, but it doesn't make you want to buy one to go grocery shopping. The brand had become polarized, and its foundation was already cracking just as the world was about to change forever. The structure was already fragile, but what came next was the equivalent of an earthquake followed by a meteorite. First, the COVID-19 pandemic. A business model based entirely on in-person social interaction is, by definition, incompatible with a global lockdown. Overnight, thousands of boxes had to close their doors. It is estimated that 20% of affiliates in the United States closed permanently during this period. Workouts over Zoom. simply couldn't replicate the magic of the community. Meanwhile, companies like Peloton saw their stock prices skyrocket. Many clients left and never came back. But the final blow didn't come from the virus, but from the founder himself. In June 2020, in the midst of the protests over the death of George Floyd, Greg Glassman decided to post an incredibly insensitive comment on Twitter that trivialized both the murder and the pandemic. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Within hours, hundreds of gyms announced they were ending their affiliation. Reebok, their main sponsor, broke off their contract. The community he himself had created turned against him. Glassman, true to his style, resisted apologizing, but the pressure was so immense that he ultimately had to resign. The man whose personality was synonymous with the brand had become its greatest poison. It was the perfect example of the risk of building a brand around a single person. Glassman didn't just shoot himself in the foot, he blasted his entire leg with a bazooka, with the building already on fire. Without a leader and with the brand in ruins, a businessman named Eric Rosa bought the company in an attempt to save it. He did a good job stabilizing the ship, but the wounds were too deep. In 2023, the new management raised affiliate fees, further alienating gym owners who were barely surviving. And then, in 2024, the ultimate tragedy occurred. An elite athlete drowned during a swimming event at the CrossFit Games. For a brand desperately trying to clean up its dangerous image, it was the worst possible scenario. Now the company is up for sale again, looking for a new savior. So, what remains of the empire? It leaves us with a brutal lesson about the life cycle of a brand. CrossFit was a rocket that soared thanks to a brilliant counter-positioning strategy and the creation of an incredibly strong community. But it crashed due to its own arrogance because of a business model that prioritized growth over quality. And above all, because of the inability to separate the brand from the toxic personality of its founder. The question that remains is whether CrossFit can reinvent itself. Is it possible to recover the magic of that community without the dogma and the danger that came with it? Or is the brand doomed to be just a memory of what it once was? An empire of abandoned garages. The story of how a single person can bring down such a powerful brand with their own words. It really reminds me of another case we've covered on the channel, about how a billionaire exposed the practices of a company with an equally passionate and almost cult-like following. If you want to see how a pyramid scheme can disguise itself as a community, I recommend you watch this video about the Herbalife fraud. The similarities in the psychology of their followers are, to say the least, fascinating.